Good morning. Today I wanted to, follow up on the three previous talks on trauma and tie it into another topic and subject that is very, very dear to my heart and my spirit and my soul and my total being. And at the same time, it's something that I've really only started unraveling in a very conscious way, though I've been working on it my whole life. And the topic of this presentation is the relationship between PTSD and moral injury. As involved as the topic around PTSD is and the involvement in that in our human evolution through military service and wars and conflicts, and that for the sake of the topic we have been speaking more primarily of my military service in Vietnam, serving in the United States Navy. But I also mentioned a lot how that impacts and how that touches everyone else in your life, and how that has evolved into a generational trauma, and it's passed on from ourselves on into the next generation, just as most of us that are living today have that same kind of stigma placed upon us because of the history of combat and war over the last several hundred years. One of the newer insights into this whole process of trauma that has become more of a public forum, at least within the spectrum of military service, is moral injury. And in no way does that preclude the fact that moral injury has been going on for hundreds and hundreds of years. But in the public eye of our most current war and conflicts, it has, over the last 5-10 years, become more of a discussed topic and a shared topic within certain forums and certain parts of our societal understanding. That being said, again, this topic will broaden our understanding that moral injury is more than just something that impacts and affects men and women that are involved in military service. So in the first few minutes of this today, I want to be able to share and explain a couple of things that I have begun to unravel and become closer to and I will supply some information as we go on with this topic. And for those of you that want to delve into it more, I mean, it's really easy. All you have to even go to Amazon and just put in the search engine about moral injury. You'll come in contact with a lot of literature that has been out there for a while, and will give you some insight into other people's approaches and ideas and thoughts about it. And maybe that'll trigger something inside of you that you'll want to, to explore the topic more in your own personal context. my context started pretty early in life. One was growing up in a moderately religious Christian family in a small town in central California. And it was a town and a time and a place in the 50s and the early 60s of growing up there that church and military service and the flag and your duty and your honor and what is expected of you all tied together. There were the yearly 4th of July parades, Memorial Day and Veteran Day celebrations. 4th of July was a big deal in our hometown, and military veterans presence was a very big deal to us in a small town. And as a young man growing up in that experience, I would say it was very heavily ingrained into me. I think my earliest comic book sessions had a lot to do with combat and trying to gain a glimpse into what occurred during the Korean War, World War II, and World War I. So it was a very strongly military supported through our religious practices regarding your future, a future that I saw and a future that I experienced. And I can tell you, I don't know that I was at all aware of the impact of what was going on or what was happening. And that story went on for 10 or 15 years. And as I reached more into my teen years and into the years of registering for the military and signing up for that part of an unknown future, being 18, consider yourself an 18 or 20-year-old young man, then I would say that I was probably more emotionally a lot younger than that. And the time came to serve. And in my brain, in my mind, in my spirit, there was no question or doubt about that going to take place. And I can look back at it now, and it was pretty much of I would consider myself to be a very moral person at that time, but also very immature about what the world was about and what military service is about. I had uncles that served in the military, and still that didn't bring home the depth of what was going on in my life. And in the context of this, later on, I will talk about a very interesting development that I only later became aware of. So to me, I was not only just serving myself, but I was serving the community, and I was serving my church, and I was serving my family, and once I got into the state steps of actually taking the action of going into the induction center and getting all tested and going off to boot camp in San Diego, something really started hitting me really deeply. And the best way to classify that is I really had no idea what was going on. I had all of these different kinds of feelings and different kinds of emotions that were enveloping my body. One, I was getting away from my hometown. I was getting away from the family, but I was stepping into something that was very, 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 very unfamiliar, and that was unsettling, and that hit me deeply. That in a way that I had no idea what I was going to be holding on to, and the challenges of boot camp, though, were to help that. We were taught training in units and support and camaraderie and dedication to each other, to the squad, to the company, to the battalion, to the training, to the effort. We were put into similar uniforms and formulated into an identity that far surpassed anything I had ever had any kind of an idea of. And at the time, I thought I was the only one feeling that and going through that and experiencing that. Fast forward to today's process of living, I've come to find out from other veterans of that era that I wasn't the only one, and that we all, to one degree or another, had been uprooted from our families and our homes and put into the service and put into some by draft, through enlistment. And it was quite a unique experience because at the same time that was going on, there were chants and screamings and protests about the immorality of what was going on in Southeast Asia and had been going on for some time. And within the belt of my own ignorance and the belt of my own innocence, that only angered me. That felt like it was an attack upon me and what I was doing and my commitment and my challenge. And we go through this whole training and process and then into active duty, and to one degree or another, those of us that were fortunate or unfortunate made it through that experience with trauma to one degree or another again. And for years after the discharge, my military discharge, I got back into work. I did what every good individual was supposed to do or expected to do and was capable of doing. And those who weren't capable of stepping up and continuing on were somehow branded as being damaged or being wounded or being different or being something that you wanted to avoid. A lot of stigma around performance and maintaining oneself and decorum once you got out of the military. And all through this process, there was something that was very deeply going on inside of me that really felt like I wasn't all together. I was one of the damaged ones. I was one of the fools. I was one of the idiots. I was one of the one of the incapable ones of maintaining relationships or maintaining sobriety or maintaining my moral structure that I had been brought up on. There was something that feels very very lost, very painful when the person that you were is no longer the same person that you are. And that hurt and that lost state and that lost feeling, to me now, today, I look at it as part of, not only a part of my PTSD, but also part of the moral injury that takes place when you take young men and women now, and before we're fully matured and fully developed, and before ideas and opinions about the world and who we are, and those ideas and opinions are taken over by an identity that you assume, identity that you take on, a uniform that you wear with inside of the uniform that cloaks you. On the outside, there's something more deeply going on. But most of our training and most of our adaptation is about putting aside that internal part of our life experience and assuming a role and identity that you are because of the uniform that you're wearing. Once that uniform comes off and you put on another part of your life, it still doesn't change what is occurring and what is happening and what took place inside of yourself. And you either deny that, or you go to work on that, or you adapt to that, or you live with that part. And a very, very large portion of the military experience and population, people learn to live with that. And then sometimes come along for some of us, living with that shift and living with that change is an undoable thing. And it's undoable because something has been undone to you. Something has been loosened up, or something has been freed up, or something has been taken apart within the structure and the fiber of the identity that you stepped into that experience with. The experience rattled you, shook you, twisted you, turned you. For some of us, it may have struck us in a very, very deep moral way. And the repercussions of that is, for me, is it tore and twisted and turned the moral fiber that I was clinging onto it in my youth, and turned it inside out and upside down, and left me with a sense of that immorality was my new identity, to exchange, to try new things, and to cross the boundaries of the normal behavior that I grew up with. And it's a very painful recollection. I'm not conveying that pain or those emotions right now, but there are times in my own privacy and the secrecy of my own life that those feelings become very strong and become very overwhelming. And only until recently, I really didn't have a name for that. And now that the current name that I'm choosing to look at thyself in that deep of a way is moral injury. The point of where your moral fabric of life is separated from you, and it may have only occurred or taken place in a brief moment, or that action took place in a brief moment, but it lasts with you for a lifetime. The choices and the actions that you took. So I will come back and I will dive more into that. And there's definitely something going on with me within the process of this presentation that I'm realizing on one level it doesn't feel very honest, that I'm being very honest with you. And that is the level of feelings and emotions that take hold of me at times. And at the same time, I'm sitting here and presenting to you something that is very serious and occurs very deeply within inside of myself. And I'm very aware that I'm guarded and I'm protecting those feelings and those emotions from you that are watching this or hearing this, but in no way do I want you to bypass the fact that to deal with these things, you've got to get to the very raw core of the pain, of the hurt, of being separated from what was once your reality, and the fact that you still carry that. If you're carrying anxiety or depression or any one or numbers of those different PTSD symptoms that I talked about in the previous lectures, and that you know that it's raw, and to get to a point to get beyond the other side of all of the symptoms of this moral injury. It's about getting to that. And maybe you choose to do it in a non-public way. That's fine. But and in a public way, that's also being displayed by many, many people. And maybe it's done in your private, or maybe you're keeping it a secret from even your own home life and your public life. But that doesn't mean that it's not there, and it doesn't mean that it's not happening or not occurring. And the symptoms of withdrawal or isolation or denial, or the symptoms of the undefined anger or depression or sadness, or the inability to connect and hold intimate relationships, and that I think is very, very, very deeply connected to a moral wound. And I know that this occurs and this happens more than just with military and combat, military active and inactive military experiences. It's all there. And it's in our religious life, our spiritual life, our political life. It exists now just as it has existed for hundreds and thousands of years. As long as there's been combat, as long as there's been injury, as long as there's been trauma, as long as one person strikes out against another, there's always the remnants of that moral injury. And so to me, this is a good topic to talk about and to dive into. And I can do that because I feel that I have a lot of support when those deeper feelings and those deeper emotions rise up, and you look all around and you realize that you, in my case, that I've kept that pretty much a secret throughout my whole life. And the literature and the information I'll share in the next episode hopefully will give you some support and some understanding if you haven't already started looking at your trauma from the other side of where you are now, and then into the deeper roots of opening up those feelings and emotions, so those feelings and emotions can be a part of your healing process. It's a good day to you, and we'll catch you on the other side. Be well.